Do you ever sit in church and feel like everyone else understands the sermon, but you don't? You're listening to the pastor, people around you are nodding, but to you the words feel like they're bouncing around and blending together. You catch a word here and there, but the full sentence slips away. So you just nod along and hope no one asks you about it later. If that feels familiar, you're not imagining it, and you're definitely not alone. A lot of people, especially older adults, experience this. The issue really comes down to clarity, not effort. The room does play a role, but it's only part of what's going on. There's another layer that most people don't realize is happening at the same time. In this video, I'll walk you through why sermons start to sound muffled or echo heavy as we get older. It comes from two things working together: what the room does to sound and how changes in hearing affect the way your brain processes it. When these come together, you get that exact experience. You can hear someone speaking, you know something important is being said, but the words just don't come through clearly. And once you understand why, it starts to make a lot more sense. Let's start with the room itself, because it matters more than people think. Churches are built to look beautiful and feel peaceful. They have tall ceilings, stone or plaster walls, large windows, wooden pews, and hard floors. All of this looks great, but it creates a sound problem. These surfaces reflect sound, so it keeps bouncing around and makes speech harder to understand. Here's what's happening. When the pastor speaks, the sound does not go straight to your ears. It hits the walls, ceiling, floor, and pews, and then comes back from different directions. In big spaces, like churches, sound takes longer to fade. So instead of one clear voice, you hear multiple slightly delayed versions all at once. When those delayed sounds reach your ears, your brain starts mixing them together. Words overlap and lose clarity. That is why everything can sound blurred or mumbled. Now, here is where the second piece comes in, and this is the part that is less talked about. Age-related hearing loss, known as presbycusis, first affects the ability to hear high-pitched tones, and this has a major adverse effect on communication, particularly in noisy and reverberant listening situations. So imagine you are already struggling to separate consonants clearly, and now you are sitting in a large church where echoes are smearing those same consonants across time. People with hearing loss often perform very poorly in reverberant spaces, and that poor performance may persist even when they use a hearing aid. The room makes it harder for everyone, but for someone whose hearing has already shifted toward that muffled, unclear quality, a reverberant church is genuinely one of the most difficult listening environments on earth. There is another layer to this that does not get talked about enough. When you are in that kind of listening environment, your brain does not just sit back and give up. It works incredibly hard to fill in what it is missing. It grabs every fragment of sound, every lip movement it can catch, every familiar phrase it recognizes from past sermons, and it tries to stitch together meaning out of incomplete information. When you have trouble hearing, it takes a greater cognitive effort just to keep up, and that can leave you feeling mentally fatigued in a way that is hard to explain to others. This is why so many seniors leave church feeling more drained than uplifted. Not because the service was not meaningful, but because their brain spent the whole hour working overtime just to follow along. And after a while, some people quietly start attending less. Not because their faith has changed, but because the experience has become more exhausting than nourishing. People who cannot engage easily or feel left out often find it as easier to simply stay home. Here is a simple way to check whether this applies to you. Think about the last few times you sat in church. Did you follow the sermon more easily when the pastor was facing directly toward you and lose the thread when they turned to one side? Did a quieter moment in the service, like a prayer or a scripture reading in a softer voice, feel harder to follow than a louder song? Did you find yourself watching the pastor's mouth more than you used to? If any of those ring true, what you are experiencing is likely that combination of room echo and high frequency clarity changes working together. The most important thing to understand about all of this is that it is not about volume. Unlike hearing loss that affects volume, high frequency loss impacts clarity. You may hear a person's voice, but miss the critical sounds that give words their meaning. And a reverberant room does not make things quieter, it makes things muddier. So asking people to speak louder or turning up the sound system does not fix the problem. It just gives you a louder version of the same blur. Sometimes sitting a little closer or more centered can help a bit, but it won't solve the clarity gap. This is why some people find genuine relief not from making things louder, but from tools designed to help separate and clarify speech in exactly these kinds of echo-heavy environments. So if you've been sitting through sermons feeling left out, nodding along but missing the message and going home more tired than expected, this is a real and explainable issue. It's not about attention or just age. It's a clarity problem, and once you see it that way, you can start fixing it. If this sounds like you, don't wait. Check the description right now. I've linked Hear Direct Club's Nova so you can explore options built for real-life listening, especially in echo-heavy places like churches, without the usual clinic hassle or high costs. You can also use code YT10 for 10% off. If you want more simple, practical videos like this, subscribe. We are sharing guides to help you hear clearly and stay connected in everyday moments.